Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth, the study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. UFO, alienology. This is the most common buzzwords today. And we are hearing it day by day, how the planes are being captured. And believe me, when I hear the American analysts talking about UFOs, it looks like a child talking about a toy because they don't understand anything about alienology or UFOs, but they do have great data. I would give them a credit for that because they collect a lot of information. India, on the other hand, has full of documented evidences of interplanetary travel in the Sanatan Dharma culture or the Vedic culture. The mention of three loka are there: Bhur, Bhuva, Swa. Swarglok, and different three lokas are there. Swarglok and Bhuva, Devlok, and also the Bhulok. Bhumandal, they call it Bhumandal, not Loka. Bhugol also they don't call it Bhumandal. So there's a documented evidences in Mahabharata, Ramayana, and it was considered very common in the ancient world, which is pre-Abrahamic world, to have interplanetary travel. Many of the great rishis, Shukdev Goswami, Vyasdev, and many other Narad Muni have documented evidences, including Arjun traveling to other planets on special planes. And there's also evidence of Indra and a lot of places. Indradhwaj, you see the pillar, which is everywhere on the planet, the symbol of power of Indra. And we see many of these evidences where Indra is coming in his plane down. It is mentioned as so common that not a single Indian history of Mahabharata Ramayana considers it as a surprise. But nowadays, we have it is a great theory being made. And again, I think a lot of fear has been cast that our aliens are going to invade us. And many of these theories are there. And I have a very special guest. You love him. Last video of his touched new heights on our show within a day. And also, his personal passion is that area. My personal passion is also that area, but I don't collect information much. I read it, I try to analyze it. So we're going to know from him what's going on in the unidentified flying objects. Actually, they are now FOs now, flying identified objects. They're identified flying IFOs now. So let us welcome Sri Kom Carpentier.
Namaskar, nice to see you again. Hello to the audience, the early morning audience. Now, I would say first that, as you know, you and I are highly involved in the study of the ancient scriptures, particularly the Indian ones, but also the Egyptian and the Mesoamerican and South American pre-Columbian ones. However, in this case, I will stick for lack of time to what is happening now, and particularly in the US, because that's where a lot of new developments are taking place. And I will connect it to two other major developments, one of which we have discussed at length in earlier shows, which is the enormous change in the world system that is taking place, with a number of traditional allies of the US, such as Saudi Arabia or Brazil, and Argentina, many countries in Africa, and even possibly some West European countries that are now moving towards a new power structure, which is, I would say, not headed, but certainly centered on Russia, China, and Iran. So that's a major change, which is creating total turmoil in the US political system, as we can tell every day from the fight between the Democrats and the Republicans and their positions on foreign policy. And then the third development, which has also made headlines in the last few days, is the advent of artificial intelligence to what has been called for quite a few years the singularity. Now, this word has been heard before, with various meanings, but the meaning that prevails is the one given by Kurzweil, a well-known scientist, who essentially has predicted that there would be a time when artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, would surpass human intelligence in many fields and would essentially make us very unequal partners, in the sense that we could easily be dominated by that intelligence, which could end up controlling us. So I won't go into that too much now because there is a lot to say about the developments on the front of what is called UAPs, which, as you said, are no longer, in fact, have not been unidentified for at least 70 years. And what's very interesting is that a number of witnesses have now come out in the US, particularly from the intelligence agencies and from the military, to tell us that not only are UFOs alien, if you want to call them that way, they are piloted by non-human beings. That's a term used now officially. And by the way, that was a taboo. To talk about non-human beings was considered beyond the pale. It was not acceptable in so-called rational discourse. And now it is not only acknowledged that they are there, and they have been there for a very long time, but also that certain agencies within the government and possibly outside the government have been in contact with them for a very long time. And the way in which this process has taken place is quite fascinating. So I'll go over it very briefly. It started with that revelation a few years ago in the New York Times that there was a special group called ATIP, which had been set up under the direction of a prominent senator from Nevada to study unidentified or identified alien craft. And some videos were taken out or leaked, we don't know yet. Maybe they were actually willingly provided by the Navy to show that these craft had been following and playing games with US Navy vessels. And furthermore, they displayed capabilities that are far beyond anything that we officially can do on Earth with the most advanced technologies. So this was a first revelation that hit the airwaves and the media in 2017. And it was becoming clear that an effort at divulging this information was being made. After decades of telling people that this is not possible, it doesn't exist, only crazy people believe it, or people who want to tell stories to make money, or because they are somewhat mentally unwell. After doing that for decades, finally, the revelation came that, yes, it's true, it's real, and we are concerned by it. But of course, the official line was, we don't really know where they are. Now, this was the situation until about last year, maybe even the beginning of this year. And now suddenly we see a number of witnesses telling us that not only do certain people in certain places know what those things are and who those beings are, but also that we have been trying to duplicate, copy, imitate the machines, and that some of us have been cooperating with them under certain programs. Now, that has come from people like CIA agents, for example, John Ramirez, who has given very long interviews lately. It has come from very prominent scientists like Gary Nolan from Stanford University, who has said that not only has he been shown evidence, but he has also been able to touch and analyze materials that allegedly came from alien spacecraft. And he has said that he has also studied the cerebral and neurological problems caused in people who had been exposed in close quarters to extraterrestrial ships and beings. And then the latest is David Grush, who has a very high rank in the intelligence, and who, in fact, was the man who every day brought to the president in the Oval Office the briefing, intelligence briefing. Although he's only 34, David Grush has a very high clearance, above top secret. And he has now come out saying, not only have I got the evidence and I have all the documents, but I have shown these documents to the select committee in charge of investigating the UFO issue in Congress. So you see, this is no longer a matter of science, technology, and maybe belief systems. It's become a very major political issue because the US Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, has, at least some of its members, have taken upon themselves to force the US government, and I'm saying force, the US government to acknowledge what it knows and what it has been doing in complete illegality, because any such program intended to reverse engineer in contact and in collaboration with alien beings should obviously have gone through a public process. It should have been presented to Congress. It should have been discussed. Money should have been allocated through legal channels. And there should have been, obviously, briefing to world leaders in the name of human solidarity. Now, apparently, nothing of that happened. The US kept it as quiet and as secretive as they could. And since in most cases they couldn't get money officially from Congress, although they could get a lot of money from Congress, because we all know that the allocations to the Department of Defense are not really audited, and you can almost use the money for anything you want. There is no control. And we all know that now the monies available range in the trillion of dollars a year and more than that. Now, if you are looking at this and considering that a lot of money was procured by other means in order to carry out these investigative programs, then you see how deep the conspiracy goes, because what you have now is a fight between the executive and the legislative. And in the opinion of many observers, I mean, you have seen that now on so many channels, and also, especially on alternative channels like Redacted and Need to Know. What they are saying is that what David Grush has done essentially creates a much bigger problem than Watergate did in its time, because Watergate involved, essentially cheating and illegal activities in an election campaign. But this is about subverting the entire process of legal government in the United States. And it has been going on for at least 75 years, since 1947, and probably before the famous Roswell crash took place. And the Roswell crash has been attested by dozens of witnesses, in spite of government constant denials. And now we know that there are quite a few other, maybe not crashes, but there are quite a few other craft that have been either picked up or given to, at least in the US, to certain agencies, because you're hearing now the number of 12 different UFOs. And you can say, well, we have heard this for so long. There are so many CIA agents who have written about it, like Victor Marchetti, scientists like Sarfati, who have been discussing it openly. But they were individuals. And you could not be sure that they told all the truth or that they knew what they were talking about. John Lear also said a lot of things. But this was considered sort of free speech. People can say whatever they want. And now what you have are official documents that have been provided to Congress. And furthermore, David Grush, the intelligence analyst I was just mentioning, also made a report to the Inspector General of the intelligence community. And the Inspector General gave his approval, saying that this was important and urgent and should be considered by Congress. So you see now there is a real split in the government between those who want to keep these things secret, as they have done for so many decades, and those who have decided enough is enough. It has to be exposed to the public, however shocking it may be to a lot of people. Because the idea that the government has been working with alien beings and probably providing them with certain facilities, such as, for example, helping them to abduct people in order to carry tests on them, because now we know that there is an extensive program of hybridization between humans and aliens. And this hybridization program has been taking place with, I would say, the tacit consent of certain authorities in the US. So I'll stop here because I don't want to make too long a monologue, and I think you may have some points to raise on this issue.
This is startling revelations, and actually I did not go through the entire details because I know you are already doing it. You're already capturing all the information, and I just wanted to get the easy way out, just listen from you. And I'm going to research, like after listening to you, I'm going to make a research. Now question comes in, what are they talking with aliens? Like for what they're talking with the aliens? Now in Mahabharata, there is a reference over there that in Kali Yuga, today's age, the people from other planets, especially the negative ones, are prohibited to come to affect life on this earth. And this is told, this is the agreement which has been like told by Yamraj to all the people who are there, other planets. So are these people coming on earth with a negative intention, or the people from earth, we are collaborating with them to create super hybrid population to control the world? What is the what are they talking actually?
You see, it's one of the most difficult questions to answer. And I will just not refer to the scriptures here, because I just want to concentrate on what we know from what is happening now. And if you watch and listen and read the testimonies that have been given by very credible people, not only in the US, by the way, in several countries, but the US seems to be the epicenter, you see that since the 1950s, there has been a contact with certain alien beings. Now, the contact took place in various ways. It might have been telepathic, it might have been through radio, and it might have been personal. There are very credible witnesses, including Werner von Braun, whom you might call the founder of the US space program, who wrote that we have entered into contact with certain higher intelligences, but we cannot tell you more at this point. And this was recorded. So it's a very public statement. Later on, a lot of information was kept hidden and people were not allowed to talk about it. Even presidents were told there is no business for them to know this. So very clearly, the information had been channeled towards some private companies. And here you are looking at the major defense contractors, particularly what is now known as, Martin Marietta, which is now Lockheed Martin, and Northrop. It used to be Hughes Aircraft, which has now been merged, because Howard Hughes himself, the mysterious billionaire, had a very big role at that time in the analysis and development of alien-related technologies. And that's probably why he was confined to a hotel room in his last years and was not really speaking to anybody. By the way, there is evidence that at least one Secretary of Defense of the United States, James Forrestal, was killed for wanting to make this information public. And we know that 10 days after he wrote a letter to the CIA asking them to divulge the information they had on aliens to NASA, President John Kennedy was shot. We don't know if there is a connection, but it's a troubling coincidence. Now, the letter to the CIA that he wrote 10 days before his assassination has been controverted. There has been discussion as to whether it's real or not, because that's obviously what people who don't like it try to immediately allege. Well, maybe this is not the real letter, maybe somebody faked this. However, it's very interesting that Robert F. Kennedy, who is currently standing for president, and who is really going deep into a lot of those state secrets, has said that he believes that the CIA killed his uncle and his father. As you know, that got him into big trouble with the social media. But anyway, that's what he's saying. Now, whatever be the reason, John Kennedy clearly wanted some clarification as to what was happening with UFOs, and that was denied to him. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning these precedents is that we understand, and this is now, I wouldn't say 100% sure, but there's a very high degree of probability, and I could go on for hours explaining why, that in 1952, the US Capitol was buzzed for hours by a fleet of UFOs. And that created such a, I would say, panic, that the Pentagon had to give a very long press conference in which they explained that they didn't know what all that was, and it was probably nothing, but they were still trying to understand it. 1952. And that went all the way to President Truman. Now, after Truman left office, he was succeeded by General Eisenhower. And Eisenhower, we understand, in 1954, when he was in California, was taken to Edwards Air Force Base, which was at that time called Muroc. And there he met, it was a prearranged meeting, he met with the crew of a flying saucer. And he was given a certain proposal. And the proposal was that if the US agreed to collaborate as the leading power on Earth, the aliens would provide a number of very I would say, regenerating technologies, which would allow people to live much longer, to have free energy. However, the condition was that the US and the USSR and other powers should renounce nuclear military power. And what we understand is that the security, intelligence, and military in the US were completely against that. They said there is no way we are going to trust these people and give up our nuclear weapons, because the Russians would take advantage of it, and we have no guarantees. So this was apparently not a proposal that was followed up. However, within a few months, there was another meeting which took place in another military base. And there, the president was given another option by another group of aliens who apparently were not from the same origin, and who told him that we will give you extensive technologies for military development and high tech generally, but it will come in stages, and you will have to let us do what we want, because we are interested in genetic manipulation and we need a lot of human DNA. And therefore, we will be quietly working. We can work with you in certain facilities, but we will do our own things, and some of it will be to your benefit. So this, we understand, was accepted. And this is what they call in the ufological community the Greada treaties, with the so-called Greys. Now, you can say, oh, this is mythology, but the fact is that now it's becoming very well confirmed and supported by official sources. Now, a lot of people, including you and me, will say, well, maybe the governments are manipulating us and they are trying to tell us these stories because they want something else. There is a long-standing theory that at some point the US government would unleash an operation called Blue Beam. And Blue Beam is supposed to be a scare operation to make everybody terrified with the idea that aliens are landing and they are going to take us over, and therefore we must invest in a huge military program in order to protect ourselves, and we must accept the leadership of the US, which is by far the most advanced country. Now, this is possible, but it's not so logical, because basically, if there is an invasion, then it's probably too late to do anything about it, and I am not so sure that they could carry out such a plan. I mean, it may have been an option, but I think what is happening now is clearly rather authentic. In fact, just a few days ago, as you probably saw in the news, there has been a...
Your video is frozen. Your video is frozen.
Yeah, and now it's gone, so I'm restoring it. Yeah.
Okay.
Main thing is that the voice did not go off. But anyway, what's happened now is that a few days ago in Las Vegas, and I remind you that Las Vegas is just less than 200 miles away from Area 51. And there was this well-known incident, which was reported all over the media, which is that a craft apparently fell, or at least something fell on the city. And then within a few minutes, the police got a call from a house in which the family was terrified, saying, we have a big craft that has landed in our backyard, and there are two people who are about 9 to 10 feet tall who are watching us. And these people had seen all over the neighborhood, they had seen this craft. So it's not as if those people were making it up. And they were saying, we are swearing on the phone. You can hear the recording. We are swearing, we are not telling a lie. This is what's happening. And the police said, we are coming. By the time the police came, the craft was gone, but they saw the big circle on the lawn, showing that a round craft had actually landed. Now, this again, we don't know what it means, but clearly there is a lot of activity going on. There are UFO fleets being seen in lots of places, and whether this is connected to the breakthrough of artificial intelligence and to the war that is taking place in Ukraine and that could become a global war, we don't know, but there is a strong probability, because we know that there is one thing that at least some of the aliens are committed to, which is to prevent a nuclear war. And they have shown it by literally spying on all the nuclear power plants and the military stations that have nuclear weapons, not only in the US, but in practically every country, whether it is India, China, Russia, France, Britain. Everywhere you have nuclear missile silos, UFOs have periodically inspected them. And of course, there is nothing we can do against that because they just come, they switch off all the electrical systems, and they disable the missiles, and then they go and the missiles come back into operation. So the question is, are they just making sure that there is no nuclear incident? That's possible. Are they mobilizing in case something terribly wrong happens here? That's also possible. And are they in some way cooperating with the US government, or have they decided that the US government is anyway unreliable and that they have to do things on their own, Because very clearly there has been a cooperation, but the cooperation has very one-sided because there is almost nothing the US government can do, or any government can do, to stop the aliens if they want to do something. On the other hand, the aliens can take into account US government communications, but they also ignore it. And if you listen to testimonies from a number of very high-ranking military officers, including the former head of the Israeli Defense Space Agency, General Chaim Hesed, he said that a number of countries have been cooperating with certain aliens and have gone all the way to Mars and even outside the solar system on the alien ships, which means that there is a particular kind of people which has been chosen to work with the aliens, and they probably are hybrids. And there are hybrids among us, and there are aliens among us. Even the former president of Russia, Medvedev, has said it to the media. He said, we have a number of people from outside staying here, and we are watching them very closely. We have a system to know where they are and what they are doing. And of course, people thought he was joking, but he kept a very straight face, So, and as you know, Medvedev is known to say all sorts of things, but he also is said to say things which he probably shouldn't say. So that's one of his characteristics. Anyway, this is where we are. And I think that the fact that several of the top experts in artificial intelligence have just given a public warning saying that this is very dangerous, we are getting into an area where we no longer have control. Artificial intelligence may take over, and we would not know what it does and what it can do to us. That shows there is something happening, which is probably due to the fact that we have finally reached a connection with a certain higher form of intelligence, which is now beginning to take over so many of our social and political systems. And this is something which was predicted, but I think we are getting there now. We were talking about 2030, but maybe we're a bit ahead of time. We have already entered into it.
My one question is, why all these aliens only come to USA? Is there a particular reason? Because we see, so we also discussed in one of the last shows that the Tibet and Lanka, that axis, is the most traveled UFO path. And the story coincides with the Mahabharata story of Kuber. And a lot of planes are mentioned in Mahabharata and Ramayana. And my knowledge is only coming from there only, where I'm not surprised with these connections, because if anyone reads Mahabharata, Ramayana, these connections are very natural. And Earth is just one place where people live. There are other places, Brahmaloka, other places also people live. And people who are living below the earth, those loka have more material power than anyone else. And those are the people who try to influence the earth. In the scriptures, is very mentioned, in the Vedic scriptures, very much mentioned. So so you mentioned correctly, some of them are coming for protecting. Some people are aggressive also. Some aliens are aggressive also. Like you said about the nuclear sites, where they're interfering directly, and some places to protect also. So my question to you is, why does US plan, and US is not a dharmic country in any way. The amount of cows they kill every year, it's phenomenally bad. It's like every day 360,000 cows are killed. So the only reason I see the aliens will come to US is to control the Americans, or the US. I'm not all Americans. There are many American Hindus also, and many dharmic good people also in USA. Not all of that. Majority are
Absolutely.
good, you know.
Mhm.
So the few political or negative forces here, they might want to control, who want to have wage wars all the time. And there are other people in Europe also, and some all parts of the world, including Asia, including India also. There are some people like that also who have negative intentions. So, but why US is the only focus?
It's not the only focus. I mean, if you look at the number of reported UFO sightings and landings, you probably would put in the top 10 Russia, some Central Asian countries, but also Britain, France, Italy, Spain, Brazil. Brazil is a hugely rich uh, land for UFO records. And the same, then you have Argentina, you have Peru, which is almost, I would say, plagued by UFOs, not plagued in a negative sense, but they are so common that people don't pay so much attention. Same is true of Chile, Mexico. So it's really a very, very common phenomenon. Why the US has this special role, I'll tell you why. Because the US has developed a system which has consumed hundreds of billions, in fact, trillions of dollars to try to control the technology that they spotted on the alien ships. And the agreements that they made are probably fairly unique. And the reason why the aliens agreed to that is probably that the US had become by far the dominant power in 1945. And they felt that if they communicated with the US authorities, they would facilitate their presence on Earth everywhere. And if you look at crash landings in various countries in Africa, in South America, you realize that in most cases, the US flew rescue teams that actually picked up the craft and the occupants, live or dead, and took them away, presumably to the US. There is a famous case which is very much in the news now, which happened several years ago in Brazil. It is called the Virginia case. And clearly a UFO crashed and it was recovered by an American team. And there are military officers from Brazil who have recorded that and testified to that under oath. So there is a very great awareness in the military in Brazil of what is going on. And as you know, the Brazilian Senate had a hearing on this some years ago, which was quite public and very widely reported. So you cannot say by any means that the US is alone, but what happened is the connection. And the connection, to my mind, came because the first to have achieved a direct contact with certain aliens were the Germans under Hitler. And when Germany was defeated, there was a mission led by Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, and in his team, there was a young senator called John F. Kennedy. And together they went to Germany to study some of the technological achievements of the German military, particularly the Air Force and the budding Space Force, because the Germans were the first to have developed a military space program. And they brought a lot of those scientists from Germany, even a lot of card-carrying Nazis, to the US to work under US supervision on a number of military programs. So there is a connection there, because once Germany was crushed, it's possible that the Americans inherited the connection, and the same aliens who had contacted the Germans decided that America was the right place to talk to. But as I said in a previous show, I have fairly good evidence from the Soviets, from the Russians now, that they also made an agreement with somebody else who was not from here. You see, the conclusion is that this universe is throbbing with life. There are many dimensions, and there are beings who can come in and out. We have seen on video UFOs that actually come out of nothing. They sort of create a window. It's like a square of light. They come out, they fly some reconnaissance flight, they send some probes down to Earth. And then when they have achieved their mission, they fall into the portal that they have created. In other words, they reopen the portal and you see the UFO vanishing into the portal, and then the portal closes. So they are not just traveling like we do in a three-dimensional space. They are traveling in space-time. And that's why some of them come from the future, because the future and the past to them are unified. It's like in Sanskrit when Kal means both future and past. So here you are dealing with a completely different science and technology. And this is, by the way, what has been acknowledged by so many top scientists now, that we have to completely change our physics and even our mathematics, because we can no longer account for what's happening. As you know, there is that huge space telescope now, which is called the James Webb, which has replaced the earlier one. And this telescope has just identified some structures in space which are creating a big problem for the Big Bang theory. The whole notion and the whole theory of how the universe was born and when it was born, 13 billion years ago, that is now very much in question. It's no longer able to account for some of the things that the James Webb telescope has shown us. So we have to practically not start from scratch, because everything we have learned can be useful, but we have to move further ahead.
I have not seen anything beautiful coming out of an explosion. So Big Bang theory is logically like broken, because if it was such, then we would have bombed everything and new things will come up, but it didn't happen. Your video is off. So coming back to the Peru, Brazil, and other countries you've just mentioned, and it is very clear, Ramayana, Mahabharata, again, reference I'll take from there, because that's my source of information, where it is said that those places are frequently visited by Siddha and Charana. And Tibet is also, Himalaya is also one place. And these places are the ancient places of pilgrimage for the whole universe, not just today. So Udaygiri is the name of the Andes mountain, which is Udaygiri is the new name. Andes is the new name, but now we are going to rename it Udaygiri, hopefully. Okay, one day. And also, Alps are considered to be the place frequently visited by great souls. And they keep visiting this earth. So you must be, we will notice a lot of UFO travel on Alps also. I mean, must be seeing that. And there are a lot of pyramids which are mentioned which are there in Egypt also. But if you look at all the temple structures in the ancient world, including Pachacamac in Peru, and Pachacamac and the temples in South America, where say Yucatan, Quintana Roo, these areas, these all places have recorded instances of people coming from other places. Guatemala has a huge references. Brazilian rainforest is largely hidden because the Portuguese control is todo, like it is a complete control on them. And so tell me one thing, like, and you correctly mentioned that they don't care about these things, and Peru especially, because they believe in the shaman culture is very popular and mainstream in Peru. It's not just the colonial powers could not do much because of mountains. Machu Picchu is one such example of an architecture at the top of the hill, which is remarkable in many ways, and it is considered to be a very recent construction, not very old. So tell me one thing, one last question. Is the geography of this earth well known to aliens, and the portals which you mentioned, open, close, many sci-fi movies, they show that all the time. And most of these ideas are coming from some vision, something is coming from those people. So do you think that these movies which have been made showing those kind of phenomena is actually a direct connection with the human? Because these ideas cannot come from blind.
They not only are, but they also reflect some experiments that were conducted by certain intelligence agencies. You don't have to think necessarily of the CIA, because the CIA is just a cover for many things, just like NASA. There are agencies that are not known. Of course, you get a bit closer to the truth when you talk about two other agencies. One is the National Reconnaissance Office, and another one is the National Geospatial Agency, which are, not to mention National Security Agency, which are all much more directly connected to extraterrestrial interaction, observation. And there you are talking about a number of data that so far have not been available. to anyone but very few, but which may now gradually be released under pressure. And, in my book 10 years ago, A Shining City on a Hill, I described what was already happening and what would happen, because I had seen a lot of that already when I came to America the first time in 1983. So that's what the book is about. So you see that a lot of that information has been lying there for a long time, but it is now gradually coming out, and it completely changes our vision of reality. And the reason why the US is so affected by this is precisely because they are the ones who have been supporting the current paradigm, which is essentially that you have to believe this is the way things are. I mean, in a way, nominally, America is a Judeo-Christian country, so you have to believe in the Bible, and then there is that whole doctrine of American technological, political, and military supremacy, and all that has enabled them to control a lot of the world for the last 100 years. And now that is suddenly not only coming into question, but it is fraying. So there is a complete shock, which is what you hear all the time in the media. This is shocking. How can aliens be here and work with some people in and out our government? This is not conceivable. Then it means the whole government structure could tumble, because a lot of people will go to jail for having broken all the protocols. And by the way, if you want to connect to day-to-day politics, you see that the reason why the FBI has been desperate to get some documents in Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago is quite possibly, from what I've heard, that he took some of the documents referring to UFO relation, not just, lights in the sky. He took documents connected to American secret programs in cooperation with aliens. And that, of course, is something that the government wants to recover, because it gives Trump a lot of leverage. And apparently, they still haven't been able to find the documents. They claim they found damaging things about nuclear plants and nuclear missiles, not nuclear plants, but nuclear weapons programs. But they haven't said what it is. And from what I understand, Hillary Clinton had also discussed a lot about that on her, private server, private computer. And that's why all those emails were deleted, because she wanted that to be obviously kept out of sight from the Republicans particularly. So there is a whole day-to-day implication of the political game in America with the entire alien question. Not just what we're referring to in popular parlance as, UFOs. It's just what's happening, what's human and what's non-human, and where are the non-humans and what are they doing, and what do they want? Because clearly they have a plan and they are carrying it out. And I think the introduction of digital technology, and then the introduction of artificial intelligence, and the incredibly rapid progress that has been made in the last few years tells us that we are just being fed certain things, because we are meant to come into a certain stage of civilization, which is very different from what we have known so far. And now this is accelerating. And whether we like it or not, I think we're going to be dragged into something that we still do not fully understand. And a lot of it is driven through the agency of private companies, because the government is too messy and too easy to spy on. So the government has essentially been divested a lot of that, and it has gone into some agencies that very few people know about, but which probably operate through some of the major banks and some of the major military industrial corporations.
So my hypothesis that maybe we should use Sanskrit to communicate with them, and maybe our yogis and our rishis and our great Shankaracharyas and descendants of Ramanuja and other people should collaborate with them, because they can talk something sensible over there. The rest of the world will talk about how to make more money, right?
And more weapons, exactly.
More weapons.
By the way, you know that Daniel Sheehan, who was the Consul General for the Jesuit Order of the United States, and who was one of the person who published the Pentagon Papers at the time of Nixon, Daniel Sheehan got access to the Library of Congress, and he got access on a eyes only. He couldn't take it out. He couldn't take any notes but he testified that he saw documents and photographs which showed landed flying saucers, if you want to call them that way, and there were inscriptions which he said to him were Sanskrit inscriptions, which means that at least some of those, call them aliens, visitors, do either communicate in Sanskrit or use the Sanskrit script. On the other hand, you have a number of testimonies indicating that there are some ancient Middle Eastern languages, particularly Sumerian. So the question is, this world is living in many different time spaces. So clearly, what we consider to be vanished civilizations may not have vanished. They may just have carried on in another plane. And so you have the Sanskrit civilization, the Sumerian civilization, the pre-Columbian Inca and Maya civilizations that are probably carrying on, but in another dimension, either in outer space, on other planets, or there is, we are living in such a multifaceted world. I mean, it's like an ant crawling on the ground, and we walk around, and sometimes we step on the ant. How do you think the ant understands us? And how do you think a bird will understand us? I mean, it's very difficult. They will say, what sort of monster is that? So if you look at the scale of life, all the way from the viruses to elephants and to the great white sharks and to whales, you realize what diversity we can see, and then imagine how much more diversity is there that we cannot see, or that we only see very briefly.
I mean, those who believe in one life syndrome, I mean, those people, how will they, I mean, when they're talking to them, what level they're talking? Because they just believe in one life and disappearing. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Yoga Vasishtha, there's a method given how to travel to interplanetary levels. There's a method given over there.
Right.
And many
also
yogis,
metals and
yes. And also in the Meru Parvat, in the Chengizi Chokusu, that area, shamans over there, which they've rejected, Central Asian shamans, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and all these countries have, China, Mongolia. All these places are filled with references where people are communicating to higher beings. And I'm sure they're doing it now also, because if you go to Mongolia, then trident, Shiva's trident, is a proper symbol of connection with the super life, which is life after this life. So I'm sure that you're absolutely right that many of these ancient cultures are still communicating, and yogis have a very easy way to communicate because they can transcend multiple layers. When people who are advanced. So I think I will request the Indians. I call many of the Indian followers of Sanatan Dharma as researchers and scientists. They should also explore, because I think they have a better chance of success actually in communication.
Well, you see, it's true. But then the story of India, in a way, is that they are so assured of their knowledge. It comes so natural to them that they are not really even interested in it. If you talk to them about it, they say, "Acha, theek hai, bahut acha," fine, and let's move on. The beings are here. Let's wish them well. Aditi Devo Bhava. And Americans instead are pulling their hair and rolling on the floor and saying, we are, what are these beings about? What do we want? What are they doing?
Indians will say, we have made a puri halwa for the alien. Please come and have it. It's all over after that. That just shows that the information is so sure about the information they have. Like, I'm not scared of alien landing at my house. If they come, then I'll have khichdi for them. And say, have khichdi.
No, you see, the question about aliens, which I like to say, like many other people in the field, is that you have to be careful, because you are not only dealing with devas, you are also possibly dealing with asuras and rakshasas. And some of them are not so far from us. They may be much more technologically advanced, but they can also be two-faced, and clearly there are certain beings like the tall whites who have bases in the US and in other countries. The tall whites, if you see them, you probably wouldn't tell the difference with a very tall Swede, because they are about 6'3", 6'4", sometimes 7 feet, and they are very white in skin and blonde. But they are humans, if you want to call them that way, or humanoids, but they have somehow gotten to another much more advanced technological level, possibly because they are the seedlings of hybrids. And these hybrids were taken somewhere else, and they developed into a civilization which probably Hitler knew about because he kept talking about the Aryans and the great blonde people who had to be the rulers of the world, and that's what he thought the Germans should be. But the Germans, of course, would be a pale reflection of what these people are.
Yeah, nowadays, whatever American media puts out, I cannot trust them. Anything. Since 2014 or 15, I've stopped trusting anything which they put out. But I do trust in your account because you do research from all sides. But an American media coming out anything is like put in the garbage and see it you for yourself like that. And when the alien comes to my house, he's going to have nice meal. If I don't invite him, but because I want to protect my house. But but just like that.
He'll go across the walls and come, and you won't even see, they are definitely interdimensional. Some of them are,
Yes.
so you really have to get used to it. That's what gets people a great shock, because, when you have people coming through your walls and then taking you away through the wall into their ships and then leaving you back on Earth, it's certainly a very traumatic experience. And it may not be with evil intent on their part, but for a human, it's still something that can lead to a shock, and major physiological and mental consequences, which are not always positive.
No, we do have to do a lot of work for Sattology, so time is not right now. So we have to continue this. So aliens, please don't come. Not invited right now. And
they themselves tend to say that time is not yet come. They say time has not come. We are not ready for it. So some of them have said that to many different witnesses. There must be some truth to it.
No permission right now. And but thank you so much, Com, and it's always a pleasure because you have, and this is your pet subject. Viewers should know that he's personally interested in that, and I'm also. But because like Com said, we are so assured of all this presence by so many references that not important for us. We have more human problems to worry about. Like I want to request all slaughterhouses and the steak industry to close down in the US. That is more important for me. And to have Americans stop creating wars. That is more important. No wars. And no interference in other countries. Live and let live. Let others live and you also live. Not everybody is an enemy in the world. Thank you so much, Com. And we will touch base same issue again with some more updates. Namaste and thank you.
Namaste. Have a good day. Bye.